shot way out there. No hotspots. No
go.
hotspots.
No hotspots. Hey, Rob. Greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'm Joe Fulgham. Welcome to Viral Transmissions, episode number 17. We're titling this one The 1%. Joining me, as usual, is Dr. Rob Tarswell. Today we're joined again by Dr. Katie Marshall. Viral Transmissions is supported in part by the BC Humanist Association. You can learn more about them at bchumanist.ca. Again, I love them. They're great. We've got a whole load of COVID news and some science and bad science to discuss today. So
bad science.
Let's get straight at it. The first bit of news that we need to talk about is bad news about America. They have hit not just 3 million infections, but 3.29 million infections as of today, and that's confirmed infections. There may be, the actual number may be higher, but that is
certainly higher.
Almost certainly. That is 1% of the population confirmed has had or has coronavirus. And we are
This isn't what Occupy Wall Street was talking about.
No, this is not this is another bad 1%, but not their fault. Well, some of them. We'll talk about that later as well. America is also up to 137,000 deaths. And that number may also be a little higher because there's some deaths that may be COVID-19 related that haven't been reported. But May. Well, we don't know how many is the problem. So we can talk about those confirmed, like we said. And I believe, Katie, you said the death rate is ticking up. And it looks like it's going to be bad.
So there was headlines for like the last couple of weeks as the number of cases went, higher and higher. Mm-hmm. The death rate basically stayed flat for a good couple of weeks. And so there was like discussion from the administration. Well, we're testing more, so we're finding more cases, but the death rate is staying the same, so everything's fine. No, like that's not how this works. So unfortunately, the death rate takes a while to catch up to the infection rate, right? So once you are infected with coronavirus, you don't die immediately, It's just not how it works.
Your swab came back, you have coronavirus. Ah!
Yeah, no.
That's not how it works.
And also, there's a phenomenon in medical testing called lead time bias, which is when we go looking for a disease, we start finding earlier and earlier cases of it.
Right.
And so from the time it's detected, there's a longer timeline until death. But that doesn't mean that the testing is and of course people who get tested get treated. And one of the big ongoing issues in medical testing is, all right, the fact that we're detecting these cases earlier and people are living longer, is it simply because we're detecting them X amount of time before they would have died anyway, or is the medical intervention making a difference? And in a lot of cases, we just don't know.
Right.
So, but here where there is no definitive intervention, if you look back in April or March, you had to be on death's door to get a coronavirus test in the United States. Now, testing is somewhat more widely available, so they're catching cases earlier. And whereas it used to be in March, April, about a 2-week lag between detection and death, now it's probably more like about a 3-week lag. And here we are in week 3 from that uptick of cases that links back to the openings starting around May, particularly around Memorial Day weekend, and the death rate's creeping up right on schedule. The train has not departed the station late. We just showed up earlier to catch the train.
The other piece, too, is that I think that there are more young people who are getting ill now, and they may take longer to die. Like if you're in your 80s and had emphysema, I assume that your ability to hang on is probably a lot more impaired than if you're in your 30s or 40s and in better health. It might still kill you, but it just takes longer for that to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, one of the things that I've been tracking is sort of so I spent 2 years as a faculty member at the University of Oklahoma, and I have been tracking what's been happening in Oklahoma.
Oh, the Tulsa bomb.
The Tulsa bombs. There's been a lot of kind of waiting to see after Trump's big rally in Oklahoma if that was going to really increase the rate in Oklahoma. Oklahoma rates have been going up. The Tulsa County public health officer says that it's post Trump's visit. I think it's a bit too early, but I mean, either way, everything is going up in Oklahoma. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to kind of nail that down to the rally or just sort of the general increase that's going on, especially around Oklahoma City and just south of there. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So we're getting these huge numbers of infections. We're also understanding that there's a longer lead time before those infections will lead to deaths. And also, it doesn't look like a lot of America is doing what it takes to get those infections down. So both the infections and death rates are going to rise. So we have a bunch of links here in our little research document talking about how the experts are forecasting hundreds of thousands more U.S. deaths. And I tweeted about this earlier. You're at 137,000 right now. As Katie reminded me, that is more Americans dead from coronavirus than died in World War I. And the number of Americans who died in World War II was 405,000. You're at a third of that right now. And it doesn't feel like you're not going to hit it. And that is terrifying. Like, I mean, we're already at too many. It's too many. It's too many. But more U.S. deaths from this disease than died in all of World War II, than Americans died in all of World War II. Obviously, non-Americans died as well. We're not including those.
And next week we will almost certainly hit 100,000 cases, new cases a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The train, the inertia in the train is running down the track. It's going to take a long time to slow that train down now.
Well, so one thing that I did early on, I was tracking what was going on in China as it was really taking off. And I was really interested in when the curve went from exponential to like hitting that inflection point where it was starting to level off.
Mm-hmm.
And so it went exponential around 8,000 or 9,000 cases. It didn't level off until it hit like 84,000. Like, so that kind of shows you that train effect, right? That once you've hit like an exponential phase, it just takes a long time for it to level out again. So
right. I mean, we've got the 3.29. Actually, the world meter says 3.4 million infected. That's tested. That's tested positive, which means that there are a whole bunch more people. I don't want to say a number, but a lot more people that have it that are also going around and spreading it to other people because they don't know they have it. With no interventions, it's just going to spread and spread and spread.
Well, and keep in mind, any tests you do today, they're not detecting transmission that happened today. They're detecting transmission that happened maybe 4 or 5 days ago, not years ago. Sorry. But right, like that there is, and of course, in that time, you may have spread it to someone else as well, right? So any confirmed cases, like that's really what the situation was 4 or 5 days ago, and maybe even longer, right? So it's a problem. The CDC head came out, I think last week or the week before, saying that they're pretty sure that even though there's only 3.4 million confirmed cases, that there's probably 10 times that number that actually have it and just haven't been tested. And some of the reporting I've heard in the US is that there's like these really long lines for testing as well. So people are not able to get tests in some places where things are really bad. So I'm imagining for the head of the CDC, there might be some incentive maybe to overestimate the number, but that tenfold, I mean, that's in line with what other antibody studies in Italy and Spain have shown. So I don't think it's unreasonable.
And if there's tenfold infections, tenfold deaths, which is going to mean over 1 million Americans dead from this.
And Ischemial, our New York viewer, quote, "Every day I can see the urgent care from my window and there are lines for testing."
Yeah.
End quote.
And Ischemia also did note one of the we try to get some positive news in this show. It's the news is so bad out of America, but there is that positive news. New York City finally had a day without COVID deaths, the first one since March 11th. Zero deaths.
Way to go, New York.
So, and again, we're getting that. We're getting certain municipalities and maybe even states. I haven't dug down too deeply at who's doing well, but certain places are taking it seriously and doing what they can. And the citizens there are, I mean, I don't know how you can live in New York and not see just the giant piles of morgue trucks and know about that and not take it seriously, like when it's right in front of you. I saw
the first wave killed 1 in 400 New Yorkers.
I saw an article about a New York nurse who returned back home. I didn't read the article, but I saw the headline that she confronted COVID in New York, finally returned home to see her friends, and they're all telling her it's a hoax, and she's seen the dead.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Like,
wow.
This is how strong denialism is in so many people. This is...
I mean, I could imagine, like, I just don't, the enormity of the tragedy, right, is something that it would be I would much rather it be a hoax, right? Like, that would be great that all those people aren't dead. And
surprise!
Sure, hey, and I wish heaven was real.
They paid me to take part in this big hoax. Yeah. Not only am I alive, I have $100,000. Hooray!
I mean, we also saw this, right? Like, after the Sandy Hook shootings, right? People sort of promoting this idea that they were crisis actors and that it was a hoax and it was, for political purposes, right? So it shouldn't be surprising that we see this again, right? With another enormous tragedy. So that it's easier to think that it's politics rather than a scary virus that doesn't care about your politics.
Yeah, there's a Carl Sagan quote that is just constantly coming back to me. I actually have it as my Facebook cover photo. I put it up 2 years ago, and I have not thought of anything better to replace it with. One of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. It's Carl Sagan just dropping some truth bombs about humanity right there. And it's
Carl Sagan subtweeting.
Yeah,
the
right.
US administration
in the future, exactly.
From beyond the grave.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you've seen his quotes about, I see a vision of a future America, right? That was a classic as well.
But speaking of charlatans and people following them, we have finally got a photo of Trump wearing a mask in public. So there is some hope that the
looking
people
very dapper.
Who follow, it's a good looking mask, and I got to admit, like I've been saying this since the start, you can look cool in a mask, and like especially covering up most of Trump's face. I don't want to diss the way he looks, but cover up as much of that guy's face as you can. And
if you get to wear a black mask with the presidential seal on it, it doesn't get better than that. It really doesn't.
No,
I will give him kudos. And it's the thing that bothers me is how many people are like, oh, watch all the Trump people start wearing masks and all the lefties are going to be mad at that. And we're all going, no, we're not. Please wear a mask.
Please.
What are you talking about? You don't understand how we work at all. You think we work like you. That's not it.
I got some of the Vancouver Aquarium masks. I have jellyfish all over my face.
Nice.
Good look. Yeah.
I still have, I've already showed this many times on the show. I still have my Mandalorian mask, which I love. It's a little wet because I was just out at the store, and every time I come back, I literally wash my hands with soap and water with the mask, so it all gets all cleaned up. Yeah.
I always tell people, wear a mask like you wear underwear. Wash it every time you wear it. Don't fidget with it in public, and don't leave your nose hanging out.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Oh, we have that. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I got to show that sign. I don't have the image ready. Okay, let's just...
Oh, no. Just do it.
I can do it. I'll just share this. I'll share my screen on the thing here. That's what we'll do.
Live television. Go to slide. Go to slide.
Right.
We're trying to go to slide. We're still trying to go to slide.
Oh, no.
Application window.
I shouldn't have
that
gone
one right
there.
There we go. There's
excellent.
There it is. No mesh, or this is on a store, I'm not even sure where. No mesh or hose masks, no lace masks, no panty masks, no dick noses. And so when I first saw this, I thought, oh, is a dick nose? That's pardon me, I'll get the names off the screen there. Are people wearing fetish masks, like fun party masks with a penis sticking out? And they're like, please don't wear your...
Be far more
no,
fun.
It's your nose needs to be inside your mask. And I am now in love with the term dick nose for people who wear their mask under their nose. Also the bottom, we can't believe we had to make this sign. Please be a good human. So
No.
good. So good.
Were people wearing like pantyhose over their face? Is this
I guess that's what's going on is people are like,
Mhm.
well, if I have to wear a mask, I'll wear one I can easily breathe through. Right? Which it's not accomplishing what we need. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not
Mhm.
doing.
So
But-
one
So-
thing, I chat with my dad every week, and my dad is, he doesn't have a lot of science education, but he's on the science train. Like he
Mhm.
believes in it, but there's just definitely some things that I think are kind of tough for him to sort of square away. And so he was asking me, in Canada,
Mhm.
our numbers are getting way better. Why is there more and more advice now to wear masks? Aren't things getting better? And so what I've told him, and I'd be curious, Dr. Rob, what you think about this, is that
Sure.
we've just gotten better evidence about the use of masks. And as we all
Mhm.
come in contact with each other, it's actually more important we wear masks to
Mhm.
try and keep those rates low as we're out. But
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Masks partially reduce the R0, right? They partially reduce the number of cases that you can spread. And if you happen to be one of those super spready type of people, because of the anatomy of your respiratory system, it's really
Special.
important. It's really important for you to be wearing a mask. But since we have no way of knowing who these lucky people are, well,
the
we should
typhoid
probably
Marys
all.
of our time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the COVID Karens. Don't be a COVID Karen.
Ooh,
Just
I like
put
that.
on a mask.
Yeah, so that's been one of the things that every week I've had to be like, just wear your mask. It's I know it feels weird that things feel like they're getting better, but still important. And if you're in the
Massive,
U.S.,
yeah,
yeah,
they're part of what's making it better.
exactly.
And they're
Mhm.
part of what keeps it better, crucially, right? You can
Yeah.
have your open economy because we know things now that we didn't know in March when it was like, okay, we better put stringent public health measures in place because we don't understand enough about how this disease is transmitted. We think it's respiratory droplets, so we're going to use that model, but we have outbreaks, so we can't understand where they came from, so we have to contact trace everything. All right, so let's close the bars, close the arenas, close the restaurants, and restart from there once we have a better understanding and better control over these outbreaks.
Yeah,
we have to get fires out.
It feels like a lot of people just cannot handle a "we don't know" response, that they don't believe that we can't possibly know the right thing to do at some time, and that they aren't really prepared with, well, how do we, you can't have not known. Like, they're all mad that we didn't know about masks early on, right? And like you said, we didn't know. It's a brand new disease. It works so weirdly and differently. We're still learning the long-term effects from it. We're still learning how it can be transmitted, even things like that. And just so much of it seems to be this human inability to handle not knowing. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like Rob, our poker playing has helped us with that. That when you learn how to play poker, especially like the numbers way and calculating your outs and what could possibly come, because when you play Texas Hold'em, you don't know what cards are going to come. So you have to take into account all of those odds of what could happen and make the right call no matter what happens or what's probably going to happen, and based on what it's going to cost you and all that other stuff.
Even more simply, though, I think part of the tricky thing is that there's also the knowledge we have is very probabilistic, right? We don't have 100% clear answers, and those probabilities change over time as we get more information. So maybe early on in everything, masks might help, they might not. That public health officials sort of had a low probability for that being a useful intervention. As time has passed, the probability that masks are doing more harm than good, or more good than harm, has gone up, right?
Which is just like poker. You get more cards on the table, you get more information, you can start to make better decisions. You have a firmer idea of where you are. Yeah.
But I just got through teaching a summer course, and I think one of the hard things is that when it comes to biology and human health is as an aspect of biology, is everything is probabilistic. Like there isn't a lot of if, at least new information. There's a lot of like, well, might be, this seems likely, we're gonna work through some logic, but there's a lot more uncertainty that people are really happy with. And I feel like that's what happens when people get trained in biology and medicine is they start becoming a lot more comfortable with probabilistic knowledge. Yeah.
There's no dose of radiation beyond which I can guarantee you'll get cancer. I can just tell you the odds just keep going up and up and up.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my husband's a radiochemist. Every so often he'll come home. He's like, I got 20 bananas worth of radiation today. I'm like, that sounds bad. I don't know. It's probably fine.
Can't remember what the banana dose is anymore. We talked about it on caustic soda, but
Yeah.
it is a
potassium
dosage
40.
measuring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the news. More bad news.
Oh.
Florida has shattered the U.S. record for a single day increase with more than 15,000 new cases in a day. And meanwhile, Disney World wants to reopen. Which, like, granted, everybody's masked up. Hooray. But I do not at all believe that you can social distance enough. And I don't even know if everybody being masked will help. I've even seen a woman who got violently ill at Disney World. Jenny Nicholson retweeted her. They were streaming. Her friend got violently ill. They got taken care of by first aid. And they said, you really need to go to the hospital. This could be COVID. And she's like, no, I'm just having an allergic reaction to the nuts that were in that mac and cheese you gave me. But it turns out she didn't have a reaction to Benadryl. Like, they gave her Benadryl. She didn't get better. So that's not what it was. And her friend was just like, no, it's fine. We're fine. Even though she got super sick and she was streaming, and a guy walking the other way just went whoosh. Like, you could see him with his mask. Like, just heard her say super sick. And he was like, eh, which is the correct response. What the fuck are you doing at Disney World? You can't take that chance.
Why are any of us here?
Why are we
What's
here?
going on?
Yeah, like, I gotta get out of here. And Disney has released a basically please come back video with all of their workers there saying, come on in, it'll be fine. But thankfully somebody on Twitter...
We've got an advanced copy here for you, special advanced copy.
We have a special edit of this by Twitter user Madrid Mike, who has very properly edited this. I'm going to share it on the screen now. Oh, let me get our names off first. I'll do this properly.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Names off the screen. All right, let me hit screen share application window. There we go.
It's the live video dance.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Stay home.
Stay home. It's not safe.
God.
Please stay home.
Do not come here.
Please.
Do not come here.
Stay home.
Please don't come.
It's not safe.
I'm scared.
Me too.
Me too.
It's not safe.
Please don't come.
Help us, please.
It's not safe.
My.
I have a family.
It's not safe.
Well, that's horrifying.
Now,
I love it.
Ischemia lads, I have a friend in Orlando and he works at Disney World. They've
Yes.
already reopened and the lines are horrible and people get too close. They also yell at cast members about having to wear masks. Disney is feeding its employees into the buzzsaw.
Yeah. So, like, here in BC, WorkSafe BC, which is kind of our occupational health and safety, is so in charge of everything. Like, literally, when I reopened my lab, I had to submit plans that made their way to WorkSafe BC about whether or not it was safe for my lab to partially reopen. I can't, like, is that workplace health and safety is just not a thing? Is this, like, do they just not
Good
have
question.
this? Like, are they just
Florida
not?
viewer, if you're out there, let us know. How does this actually happen legally? Beyond just white envelopes full of cash. What is the legal mechanism? If
Yeah,
there is
like,
one.
And I will tell you, like, our lab is so, like, you know, we have, I think it's like 1,200 square feet of space, and I'm not allowed any more than 2 people in there at a time, which seems reasonable. And they have to be masked and everything else. And there is, like, you know, disinfectant spray everywhere, and, like,
is it a lab with windows and you get fresh air flowing through there?
No. I mean, the few hoods generate quite a lot of airflow, but yeah. It's, I mean,
that might help.
you know, it was fair enough, to be honest. I mean, it was a little bit of a hassle in paperwork, but, you know, it did make sense that it was comforting to know that someone who actually knows about infection control, which I do not, because I don't do that kind of science, is actually watching to make sure that that is safe. And it just seems that that is not the case in a lot of these workplaces that are opening in the US. So, yeah. So it's all right. You can go to Disney World even if your passport is worthless, right? Is that the comforting thing for Americans now?
That's the only world travel you can do right now from the United States. There are a few countries. There's a map of all the countries you can go to right now if you're American.
So I can bring that up
very,
right
very
now.
Small.
Visa-free travel for the plague states of America. This is from a Medium article. Let me put the link right there so you can read it if you'd like. There's a list. All the places you can go. Albania, Antigua and Barbuda, Aruba, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Bermuda, Croatia, Dominican Republic, Ecuador with a 14-day quarantine, French Polynesia, Ireland with a 14-day quarantine, Jamaica, Kosovo, South Korea, 14-day quarantine, Lebanon, Maldives, Mexico, North Macedonia, St. Lucia, St. Martin, St. Vincent, Serbia, Tanzania, Turkey, Turks and Caicos, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, and UK, both of those also with a 14-day quarantine. So the ones with the 14-day quarantine are not on the map that's being shown right now. But yeah, you can see it's basically the Caribbean, a couple of states, nations around the world, and the rest of them just absolutely not permitted anymore if you're an American.
Don't come to Canada, please.
Or you can come to Canada if you say you're going to Alaska.
Oh boy.
Oh God, that makes me so. There was some reporting this week that people with American plates have been getting their cars keyed in Canada, which I was not super impressed with. Seems you don't know, right? Maybe the car was bought in the U.S. and the person, now lives in Canada. We don't need to.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, here we've got just south of Vancouver. For our American viewers who didn't know, there's a little tiny nub of America that's actually attached to Canada and is not physically connected to America. It's called Point Roberts. It just happens to be south of the 49th parallel, but it's connected to Vancouver, and you live there, and basically it's all Canadians that live there, but they all have American plates because they're part of Washington State technically, but they live in Canada. They work in Canada. Their lives are in Canada, and there's this cute little customs station that you have to cross. And one of the biggest businesses in Point Roberts is it's a place where people mail things to pick them up,
right?
To come across to Canada.
Yeah, PO boxes.
I have done that. Yeah.
I remember going to Point Roberts in, I think, was it junior high? It might have even been elementary school because we went to the beach for some kind of go look at the nature on this beach in the ocean. And Point Roberts was good for that. And I don't think as a kid I even knew it was America that we were entering.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when we were kids, we didn't need passports to go to America.
When I was a kid, I didn't need a passport, and I'm a little younger.
Didn't even have to show an ID. I can remember growing up in the going up in the Fraser Valley. I would sort of just rock on up to the border, and they'd say, "Where are you from? Chilliwack. Where are you going? Just going over to Sumas to get some gas. Okay." And boom, you go. Get your cheap gas. Just come back up. How long were you in the United States? About 8 minutes. All right. Purpose of your visit, getting gas.
A little bit of milk. And they would be like, it's not worth charging you duty on that. Go ahead. Like, technically, they're supposed to. But because there's just thousands of Canadian... Because back then, gas in Canada would cost you what? I'm just going to pick numbers out of my butt here. But like $20 to fill up your tank in Canada. But if you cross the border, it would be like $8. So it was just totally worth it to save $12. And then you could also buy milk cheaper down there because we have a whole milk cartel up here to protect the farmers.
American liquids.
I honestly, the idea of the American border being closed, I still haven't totally... I grew up with just going across the border from Southern Ontario up into upstate New York all the time. And the idea that the border is closed, I just haven't fully grappled with that yet. And a lot of my work has been, going to conferences in the U.S. I was supposed to be in New Hampshire this year, couple of weeks ago. I keep looking at all the things on my calendar and like they're just passing me by. I was supposed to be in Prague this week. Prague.
That would've been
Anyway.
cool. That
I
would've been
know.
cool.
I'm just gonna drink a Pilsner here and it's just not gonna be the same.
And we have a few more news articles. One, people have symptoms for 2 months after infection. Another one that's related. We're going to try and get through these a little quicker. Coronavirus pandemic could cause wave of brain damage, scientists warn. So this is about the non-death stuff coming from COVID. It's not just the deaths that are the problem. That people are having long-term, I think with some people even like, it looks like it might be permanent damage to parts of their body, as far as we know. We don't know, but
So I mean that 2-month article is interesting. So that was a study that came out looking at about 154 people who'd been discharged from hospital, and 2 months later, 87% of them still had symptoms of their coronavirus infection. And this is a disease that's now 8 months old. If you're as generous as possible, going back to the first cases in China, and so we now have people who've gone past that 6-month window where it can be considered a chronic illness. And
Is that the official definition?
yeah, generally speaking, that's the definition. So so yeah, we have, and it's not just a small number either. Like
that is
87% of people discharged from hospital, and the hospitalization rate is about 100 in 100,000. Not of 100,000 infections, but 100 people in 100,000, right? Because
oh, jeez. Yeah.
The hospitalization rate is in people who test positive. The hospitalization rates are up to 15 to 20%. So this is bad. This is
Like if
lots and lots of people
gets it as a nice round number, then that means that maybe 10% could have some kind of significant long-term damage.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So just totally off the. That is terrifying. I mean,
right.
Sort of like initially, I was like, oh, like I'm a runner. I like to do outdoor stuff. The idea of long-term like lung damage, not so great, but the brain damage and the other sort of like the weird things that people are reporting, just really that kind of terrifies me.
One stroke. Whoop, oh, there goes all my cryobiology. It's gone now. I'm not employable anymore.
A lot of tuition dollars on this brain.
Right? Yeah.
I'm terrified because it like colds knock me. I totally am a sufferer of the man cold. Like I get colds or the flu, and I am a miserable mess on the couch. Like just because my fun is video games. I think if you follow me here on Twitch, you know that I play a lot of video games, which really involves sitting in this chair and playing them here. When I get a cold or a flu, I'm too sick to sit in this chair and play video games. That's bad for me. So I know if I get COVID, I'm done for. I'm going to be one of the 1.5% in my age group.
Men do tend to die more easily from COVID. So
I'm a non-smoker.
About 2/3. About 2/3 of COVID deaths are men.
Mm-hmm. And
ischemia. Let me add this quick. Ischemia, lads. I was diagnosed at the end of February, and I'm still having trouble breathing, even though I haven't had a fever in months.
Shit. Yeah.
So that's 4 months after the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be really curious to see some measures of lung capacity shifts or like that. Yeah. And that's just, I mean, this is why like these ideas that letting it burn through the population, it'll be fine. It's not an all or nothing thing, right? Like you're just, it's not, you survive, hooray, everything is fine and dandy. Like it's great that you survive, but there are these potential long-term effects that I just can't, like you think about what kind of like additional healthcare burden that would actually place on society as well. Because, what happens if you're in your 30s or 40s, you get this lung damage that is more, mostly permanent. And then, by the time you hit your 60s, 70s, like I don't have the clinical background to know, but that seems bad. Like,
oh, it's bad. It's bad. Yeah. I mean, this is sort of like, we have a real forest fire problem here. So we're going to let the forest burn down. You don't solve your forest fire problem by letting the forest burn down.
I don't know. That sounds like some commie talk right there. So, Sorry. Yeah. I still can't get over Bolsonaro getting COVID and just like his comments about it. yeah, he's gonna just man through it. Well,
I'm
if
so
men are more
Take it-
likely to die, that's the wrong approach, clearly.
I'm so torn on the Schadenfreude about stuff like that, though, because
Mm.
we get a lot of stories of we actually
Mm-hmm.
have one. We'll mention it now. Florida County Commissioner who voted against masks in hospital with COVID. Bolsonaro has it. Things like that. All these
Boris
people who were saying it's no big deal or it's a hoax or put up with it or getting it, and I want to be like, yeah, take that, you get it, but they'll infect
They
other
don't.
people. They'll infect other people. They will, like they got it through their own foolishness, and then they're going to inflict that on other people near them who maybe weren't as foolish, who maybe even wore a mask, but it just wasn't enough.
And even if they got sick, like Boris Johnson, right? He goes into the ICU. He's that sick. And has he been doing a good job of managing it after? No. Like,
There was no come to Jesus moment for Boris, or at least
No.
none that I can detect.
Yeah, we can take these kind of right-wing dope leaders and rank them in dopiness, and it's really weird to see Ontario's Ford actually be pretty low on dopiness, because as much
He's
as
rocketing his way back up.
he's
he's working on it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
also, like, Ontario's outbreak initially was bad because he made the call to go have a great March break
Yeah.
and then come back and it'll be grand for everybody, and it was not great. So,
Not grand.
no, not grand.
But he
No.
seemed to learn from that. Has he forgotten his time now? Tempered that lesson that he's learned.
Well, I think right-wing
Tempered is
Canadian
the right
leaders are always kind of stuck in this place where they want to be kind of American, but not too American. And so I think he's just trying to tread that, that line very carefully. But the thing that worries me about Bolsonaro is if he gets it and it's not a big deal, he can say, look, I had it. It's fine. I manned my way through it.
Yeah.
Like, why is everyone so worried?
Even though the odds are you probably will.
Mhm.
Right? It seems that, most people get it, and most people, even though we're talking about long-term stuff, most people seem to get it and then end up... Well, actually, Rob, you said 87% of those people 2 months later still have...
Hospitalized. Not everyone, but yeah.
Okay, but yeah.
And let's not forget that right now, the number one death factory for coronavirus in the world right now is Brazil at about 2,400 cases a day.
Oof. Yeah.
Woof.
So,
Woof. Should we talk about some bad science?
yeah,
Bad
so, you know,
science.
if you just stop taking your proton pump inhibitors, you'll be fine, right? Right?
So Rob found this. There was an article that looked very scary. It said proton pump inhibitor use doubles risk for COVID-19. So proton pump inhibitor, that's something that reduces the stomach acidity, right?
It's an
Yeah, so
acid
here's the-
blocker, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got little
Your stomach
cells
acid
called...
is- Oh, yeah. I was going to say, sorry.
Yeah.
You've got two now. Stomach acid is hydrochloric acid, right? And part of hydrochloric acid are the protons. Proton pump the protons into your stomach, and that's where the hydrochloric acid comes from. Sorry, Rob.
Okay.
I just
All right.
I had to write an exam on this last week, so sorry.
Okay, sure.
So, we could get into the parietal cells if you want. I mean,
No, that's fine. That's fine. You're on it. You're on fire. Yeah. So
sorry.
proton pump inhibitors block acid secreting cells. So they raise the pH of gastric juice for those who maybe don't have a nice mucosal coating or are currently on treatment for ulcers. You don't
Okay.
want acid eroding your ulcer.
Right.
It's often used as a treatment for reflux disease, even when there's not a clear case of acid erosion or acid causation. It's still used symptomatically, and it seems to have an effect.
So this looks bad. But then Katie took a look at the study.
Yeah. Well, there's a few sort of things you should do, I think, when you find one of these studies that makes it big in the news. And one of the simplest things you can do is just Google the authors. Who are they? Are they, do they have some expertise that makes sense? You might stumble across something useful along the way. So when I Googled the authors, I found, okay, they're gastroenterologists. That's great. They seem to be clinical professors. Great. Oh, senior author, also the editor-in-chief of the journal that the paper was written in. Okay, then.
Mm,
Yeah. So that, I mean, it doesn't mean the article's wrong, right? So, but it is a red flag, right? When you have a conflict of interest that is so clearly tied to the publishing of the paper.
it may not have had as rigorous a review as it
Well,
might.
and usually papers will have their review history on them. And so one of the other things I always tell people to look for, like, did the paper get submitted and then was accepted within like a couple of days? That's usually another red flag that it didn't get a really thorough peer review. I couldn't find that information for this paper, so that's a bit of a red flag.
Mm.
Yeah, there is a certain high profile scientific journal, PNAS, that also will accept direct submissions from the authors and doesn't go through peer review. So anyway, that's another thing. But more importantly, it's also good to look at the results section, because that's like the meat of a paper. And if you look at the results section of this paper, there's a table. And one common thing you'll often see in papers like this is a table that shows kind of the characteristics of the study population. And often it'll be, if there's two groups, it'll show the study, the characteristics of those. So like the average age, like who are they, where are they from, all that, the basic information. And so I looked at that for this paper, and we had the characteristics of the overall population, and then the characteristics of the population that tested positive for COVID. And there's a really strange thing here. If you look at that, about 70% of the people who tested positive for COVID had a high school education or less. And that compares to about 29% in the overall population. Okay. So that's odd. It suggests that, maybe if you're working in a job that has a lower education requirement, maybe you're more likely to get it. I'm like, okay, I could actually plausibly see that.
And that lines up with the percentage in the overall, which looks like 28.7% of their overall had high school degree or less. Okay.
70% of the ones with COVID. With
COVID, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually a much higher risk factor than PPI usage.
Right
there.
Yeah.
But then look at the total household annual income. Right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the overall population, about 7.5% of people in this survey had a total household income of $200,000 or more. Right? That makes sense. It's a little high, but kind of makes sense. You look amongst the people that tested positive for coronavirus in this study, 63.5% of them in this population that all have high school education or not make more than $200,000 a year.
Wow.
And I just don't this also suggests that making a really high income is a risk factor for coronavirus.
That's a relative risk of 9.
Yeah.
9. That's great. That's like lung cancer smoking levels of relative risk.
So this made me very suspicious about the data set. And so I often, when I review a paper, I go right to the results, right? Because I want to see what the data look like. And I'm just like, red flags are popping off here everywhere. 63.
Cat butt!
Cat butt, sorry. So 63.
This is a family show.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, he knows about the swabs. Anyway, so 63.5% of all the people in this data set, that have coronavirus make a family income of over $200,000. Doesn't make any sense. So I look, where did that data come from? It was an online survey. Yeah. So, did people lie? I don't know, but that seems real suspicious.
There's a lot of people with high school educations or less making $200,000 or more who all got coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Self-reported.
Makes sense to me, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also just really strange things. Like, they report in the paper that they saw more men getting coronavirus than women. But then if you look at that same table, that is not the case. So it doesn't line up.
They didn't even read their own table, their own rotten table.
Yeah. So
we can't blame this one on Surgisphere, unfortunately.
No, this was like another data set. And I don't, the authors seem legit, so I don't know why, all I can think is that They were in a hurry. They work on proton pump inhibitors. That's their area of expertise.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't look at the data and they were just interested in, does coronavirus, increase with proton pump inhibitor usage? Because that's their area of interest. And they just didn't look at the rest of the data, maybe. I mean, yeah. It seems like
She blinded me with bias. Bump, 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 bump.
Yeah. Also, the mechanism itself doesn't make sense. So what they outline in the introduction is by taking these proton pump inhibitors, you increase the alkalinity of your stomach, so you decrease how acidic your stomach acid is. And acidity will kill coronavirus. So if you're taking proton pump inhibitors, then you should be killing coronavirus in your stomach less. But why would you want to kill coronavirus in your stomach? Are you eating the virus? Is that what they're claiming here? Is the mode of infection? Because I'm pretty
Delicious.
sure we're all on board that it's aerosol and you breathe it in and that's the issue. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, unless there's something.
It is
there
not
I'm
a food.
understanding.
Yeah, coronavirus is not a foodborne illness.
So
Yeah.
why?
Early on, there were some worries about that because we didn't know anything. But it turns out, no, you can just rinse your lettuce with water and you're fine. Coronavirus is not a foodborne illness.
So why they think that proton pump inhibitors would affect how likely you are to be infected with coronavirus just doesn't make sense as from a mechanistic point of view, as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm not an MD, but I know that your breathing tube is different than your food tube. So
Yeah.
That's true. They do look different.
Thanks,
I
doctor.
look at them on CTs. Yeah.
I wasn't sure as a non-expert who has, though I do cough occasionally when water goes down the wrong one.
you get a whole
Curiously.
flap that takes care of that whole situation.
Yeah.
So it's another case of when your only tool is a hammer, everything is the coronavirus.
Well, and I'll tell you, in my field, I'm getting bombarded with, here are grant opportunities for studying coronavirus. Here are, all the major granting agencies that I normally apply to have emergency funds that have been deployed to fund this shitty science, right? That everyone's switching to last minute. And I get it. We want to cast a wide net on research, but basically you have a bunch of people like me who have expertise in non-coronavirus things, taking our particular hammers, and what do you know, everything looks like a nail to us, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So coronavirus, we just need to freeze it, it'll be fine.
That's right. And then Trump will say we just have to freeze everybody who's got it, and because freezing kills coronavirus, and then people will jump into freezers and die.
Turn on your air conditioning, everybody.
Yeah, you heard
That's
it here
the
first. No, I mean, one of the more sort of scary aspects of this, so in my field, what a lot of people do is this ecological modeling, so trying to predict where species are and are not based on environmental characteristics. And so in March and April, there was a bunch of papers that came out doing population or species distribution models for coronavirus. And the problem is coronavirus was not in equilibrium around the planet, right? It just hadn't gotten to some places and taken off yet.
Right.
And so what those papers suggested was that coronavirus was just going to go away when it was hot out, right? That hotter countries, and there were some papers showing, warmer cities in China had lower R naught values. And so people were just saying, it's fine. Hot countries don't have to worry about this. And I've read some reporting out of Pakistan, for instance, that the government kind of used that as a bit of an excuse to not deal with early cases. And so they said, we're not at risk. So, and 250,000 cases later, plus probably, that bad science has had some really severe consequences. So,
it goes back to probability, right? Sure, that's a bit of information you've got, and it might mean that the hotter countries are going to be less susceptible to it. But there's not enough information to make that claim for sure. But people did.
Yeah, and it was all over the place.
Yeah, and 3 of the big 5 countries right now, the so-called the Brimus countries of the 5 biggest sources of infection in the world right now, right? Brazil, India, Mexico.
I also don't think of Texas
They're
and Florida as particularly cold places.
Yep.
not particularly cold.
Yeah.
No.
Especially right now in July.
Although part of me kind of wonders if some of the spread is because people are all staying inside where it's air conditioned.
Oh, I
So-
absolutely think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely think so.
Hmm.
People
So-
rushing into indoor crowding near the AC. That ends up
Right.
becoming the risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there's been some discussion of movement through AC systems as well, potentially. So
Well, this kind of comes to the whole this respiratory piece, right?
yeah,
The classic
yeah,
the classic model of the droplet spread is you either are close to someone and you get those droplets directly, or those droplets land on a surface, you touch the surface and touch your eye,
you know,
get it in your mouth.
Yeah.
But when droplets are small enough, of course, they stay buoyant in the air. The question was, is coronavirus transmissible through aerosolized particles, the ones that are small enough to be buoyant in the air? This is an ongoing battle back and forth, and it's thought to be attributable to at least some of the spread that's happening in closed-in spaces that seems to be not as prevalent in outdoor spaces. So the thought is that in some of these things that they study, the person who was the spreader is just way too far away from someone who caught it for it to plausibly just be direct droplet spread. There must have been some tiny droplets buoyant in the air. And so I think there was a letter that came out last week signed by 240 or so scientists saying, come on, WHO, get with it. There's some degree of aerosolized spread. You've got to start saying that in the messaging. And you found a really neat quotation from St. Bonnie Henry.
So, yeah, I was going to say our one and true, one and only savior, Bonnie Henry, our public health officer of British
God
Columbia.
is real, and she's a woman, and she lives in British Columbia, and she likes flu bugs.
Yeah. So she said basically, and I think this is true. So the WHO, since all of this, has actually come out and said, oh, there might be some aerosolization, but it's basically been a week of like back and forth, like why won't WHO admit it, and why don't they make more of a big deal of this, because we all know this is the case. So Bonnie Henry came out at a conference call on Monday, and she said that the letter was designed to foment a bit of controversy, and the disagreement is part of an ongoing discussion about how coronaviruses and other illnesses like influenza are spread. I actually think it's a bit of a tempest in a teapot, she said, in that we all agree on the extremes, and we're fussing a little bit about how much we need to focus on the bits in the middle, she said during Monday's briefing. With airborne viruses, you can get these tiny disease-carrying particles in the air for hours. Bonnie Henry said, we know there's a gradation of how droplets come out when someone coughs, sneezes, or talks. It is the smaller ones that are breathed deep into the lungs, and it's the larger ones that can often be deposited up in the back of the throat or in the back of the lungs. But it's not transmitted long distances in the air column. We're all on the same page about that. Where there's a challenge is how much of it is transmitted through the small droplets that are transmitted when I'm close to you. So Bonnie Henry is basically saying there's kind of this gradation of droplet size. And it's like, well, okay, some might get moved a little bit, but it's not like a huge long distance air column thing like you might get with measles. So
Right.
if
Yeah,
Bonnie Henry,
because with measles, you could enter a room where somebody had measles and it would still be floating in the air. You'd breathe it in.
Hours later.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that with coronavirus. We're talking what the people writing the letter, like, they're basically talking about in some very rare cases, in probably some pretty very specific setups. I don't know what they are, but maybe some kind of fan that's blowing it, or I mean, we talk about droplets lasting in the air. We have clouds. Those are water droplets. They're up in the air. So it's totally possible for a large droplet to be in the air for a while under certain circumstances. So I believe that. The question is, does this affect how we respond to this at all?
wear a mask,
Wear a mask.
wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Mask, hand hygiene, distance.
Mm-hmm.
So
The
there
big
you
three
go.
are still the big three.
And that's basically what Bonnie was saying, was that, At the end of the day, does it change how we manage this? No, right? It just means that masks are that much more important because you don't want to get that virus into small, really tiny particles into the air.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah,
So-
that as somebody infected, it stops you from pushing them out. That's the really big thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody knows if they are or not, so we should all be wearing them. Yeah, for sure. Good stuff.
I was gonna say it's
Don't be
Schrodinger's.
COVID Karen.
No, yeah, Schrodinger's typhoid Mary, Schrodinger's COVID Karen.
Do we want to talk about the White House seeking to discredit Fauci? We can.
This is not a surprise, but
No.
I was going to say, U.S. Federal administration continues to do exactly the wrong thing. Let's carry on.
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, that's what Trump does. If you don't completely toe his line, you're his enemy, and he attacks you. And since he's kind of in charge and he's surrounded by toadies, they're all going to do the same thing. So yeah, just more of the same. As much as he's now wearing a mask, right? One step forward, one step back. Good job. Yeah. There's not much to say about that. Should we end it off with the music video that I've got? I think that's what we should do. I think we're at an hour now, which is a perfect time. I love this.
This email has a question.
Oh.
Can I answer it real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah. A positive people more likely to get coronavirus. So totally true.
Okay.
Yeah. My
Weird
assumption.
science.
Yeah, don't know why.
Jeez.
I'm assuming it has to do with the ACE2 receptors, but so they are everywhere and they're all over your blood vessels.
Now I got to look at what I am. I forget all the time.
I know this because
Damn
I'm
it!
positive. So
Damn it! I am A positive.
yeah.
Oh, there's a few A positives in the chat here.
I had to. Yeah, there we go.
B positive here.
You
Yeah.
lucky bastard.
It's not my life attitude, but it's my blood type.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I think it's one of those things though that it's a pretty so people always say, oh, I only trust a study that has an ginormous sample size. This is one of these studies that had a ginormous sample size. The problem is with such a big sample size is you can detect really small effects. So I think so the bigger the sample size, the smaller the effect that becomes statistically significant. And so I think the effect size on this was not super huge. So I don't think we're all about to, get this. And
It's not
what
gonna-
do you do fundamentally with that information?
It's not going to change what I do. I'm still going to wear my mask all the time. I'm still going to social distance. Still not going to go
Yeah.
date. It's no, it doesn't change. It just makes me more terrified. Hooray!
Sorry. This evening's abject terror are brought to you by I don't know, aerosolized droplets.
The letter A and the plus sign.
So I have some good stuff to end up on this show because we try to. The show's such a bummer sometimes, like even to us. So we're trying to get a little more levity, some fun stuff. This is a song by Scott Hoying, who I'm not familiar with, but I think he hosts some TV shows that I don't watch. But I'm not going to show his version of it. This is from a friend of mine, burlesque performer Desi Desire. You can find her official page on on Facebook as official Desi, Dezi. And let me just start sharing this video here. The song by Scott Hoying is called "Wearing a Mask is Sexy." Let me get rid of our things here. There's Desi, and here we go.
Wearing a mask is sexy. Wearing a mask is hot. Wearing a mask makes your butt look better than doing a million squats. Wearing a mask is cute. Wearing a mask is cool.
And Desi has
Wearing a
sold all
mask
the
is for
masks
people who
themselves.
did above average in school. I can't mask the feeling when you are wearing a mask. What turns me on is listening to scientific facts. A mask is the accessory to turn a 6 into a 10. Cause stopping viral spread makes me spread my legs, amen. Look how flexible I am. Wearing a mask is easy. Sickest way to not get sick. I heard people who don't wear masks have the tiniest little amount of respect for people who might be immunocompromised or older or vulnerable. And also, it's not hard.
Yeah.
Woo, that ending though.
Love it. Yeah.
Times.
Yeah. Let's go back to us. There we go.
Well, there we go. That's our new theme song. Is that the idea?
Maybe that
that's
could
a
be
good
the new
theme
theme
song.
song. Yeah. So I posted a link to Scott Hoying. He's the original guy who made that song. He has his own little dancey video. So if you prefer the male bodies to the agendered bodies, which is actually how Desi describes themselves, they're pretty femme a lot of the times, but there are also performances by Desi that go very masculine. Super cool person. Tons and tons of great performances from them. Check them out. Well, let me get
And
that.
also interest in public health. I mean, really, you couldn't ask for more.
I
Burlesque
made a
needs
quick
help.
run to the store today, and I really was thinking as I was looking at people, wow, that really is sexy that they're wearing a mask. And saw some traditionally attractive people not wearing masks, and I was just... No.
Not wearing
No,
a mask is
that
the new smoking.
That is, yes, it
heard it
absolutely
here.
is. Smoking is a total deal breaker for myself. There's Desi's page if you want to follow them. They're great. Although they didn't post that on their page, they only posted that to their personal Facebook and didn't realize it would be as popular as it was.
Hey, how could you not, want to share that with the world?
I
Really.
100% agree. I think they should repost it to their official page and get it out there. They've also got a Twitter, but they haven't used it in quite a while, probably because Twitter is a hell site. Especially
Hey, I go Nazi hunting on Twitter. That's what I do nowadays for fun.
yeah, to me,
I go Nazi blocking. That's all.
yeah.
120,000 and climbing.
Oh
Yeah.
no, for me it's everyone that I get banned from the site is a little cry of victory.
Oh,
Nice.
That's,
See?
My buddy Steven Schwartz does the same
Headhunting.
thing. Yeah, he's great.
Mhm.
That's super good.
I got to
And
rethink
it's
my
actually-
whole approach.
Yeah, so I also find that Twitter has been getting better recently. There's been some stuff that I was like, oh, I don't know if I could get them blocked over that. And yeah, it totally worked. So yeah.
Good.
Also ones that seem very clearly to be bots, like the Trudeau must go MAGA bots. So the ones that are like both anti-Trudeau and like MAGA are usually bots in my
Yeah.
in my
Again, it's
estimation.
probability. There are some people who have seen the bots and then monkey see, monkey do, right? Repeat it.
right.
But so many of them are just, bots. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Viral Transmissions for this week. The 1%. Tons of bad news. I'm so sorry, America. We laugh sometimes.
Watch the
but-
Desi video many times.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
over and over again.
I
You'll
will
be
bug
fine.
In your
Desi now
hands.
to throw that up. Actually, I will ask Desi if I can throw that up on the. Actually,
in
Viral
your
Transmissions
hands.
page did share on Facebook. We're on Facebook, Viral Transmissions. We did share Desi's video, so you can see it there if you like. And I will ask them if we can actually post it on our Twitter account as well, because I obviously have it downloaded in order to share it here. Ask for permission, everything. They're totally excited about that.
Cool.
Gave me an enthusiastic thumbs up. So that's the show for this week. Anything else anybody wants to throw in before we go? Nothing to plug.
Spread the word, not the virus.
Spread the word about Viral Transmissions, not the virus. Thanks so much for joining us, viewers. We love having you here. It's great to have you in the chat and hear from you. Eskimil, you're here all the time. Love you. So great. Good luck with your move to Canada. I hope it goes well for you. I hope Canada does not take a hard right turn into terribleness in our next election. Because, boy, there's a lot of dumb Canadians out there who...
And Trudeau loves to just trip over his own feet. So
Yeah. I mean, I didn't vote for Trudeau is my it'll do candidate. Like, I'm not super upset. He's our prime minister, but I voted for Jagmeet. So he's actually my local member of parliament.
Yeah, you literally voted for him
I
directly.
literally direct.
Yeah.
I'm one of the few people in Canada who's able to vote for him directly. If you're American, we vote for our members of parliament, and then the parliament itself determines who the prime minister is, which generally means that the party with the most MPs does it, and they generally decide that before the election happens, so you know which party is going to represent which person. But I got to vote for him directly as my MP, which was great. So proud of him. So proud of what he's been doing. But let's not turn this into a political show. Still, that's the thing about Trudeau. Like, Trudeau is just kind of that liberal, and I mean that in not the party sense, because that is the name of his party, but that modern liberal, still way too buddy-buddy with corporates, still a little too self-serving for me, not really in it to make the country as good as possible for everybody kind of politician. And yeah, that bugs me, but that's also been the country I've lived in for most of my life, so at least it's not a giant step backwards like the Conservative Party is. So... fine.
I vote center left for harm reduction if I'm forced to.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I was absolutely ABC. I'm ABC in our elections, anything but conservative. I'm very happy to live in a strong NDP riding. This was an NDP riding before Jagmeet came here. He did very well in the election, so I'm happy I'm able to vote directly for an NDP candidate. But I would absolutely vote Liberal if the NDP candidate here did not have a chance. I would do it. Not exactly happily, but okay, too much politics. I'm sorry. Let's move on to the end of the show. Again, thanks so much. Spread the word, not the virus. We'll see you all next week.
Wash your damn hands.